An extremely helpful exercise that has helped me navigate a lot of situations and get some courage in my life is asking myself, is this rooted in judgment or is this rooted in logic? I'm reading a very fascinating book called Failure of Nerve, and it basically talks about leading in times of chaos. And by nature, leaders are often stepping into the unknown. And the followers that are following the leader, they want to have a sense of assurance. And most people's sense of assurance comes from knowing. So, by definition, you can't really know the unknown. And so people will easily revert back to what he calls mythology, or basically belief systems. Sometimes belief systems are great guardrails. However, they create emotional ties in ways that can also really slow down growth. A perfect example of this is back in the 1500s, map makers used to define reality for the people that would buy the maps. So these explorers would go out, Marco Polo, Columbus, and the different people like that. They would basically, at first, were educating people that the equator was the end of the earth. And then after a while, when sailors started going past the equator, then they started throwing in, okay, after you get past a certain point, then there's a giant sea monster and dragon, whatever else it might be. Essentially, they wanted to sell their maps and they wanted to be able to sensationalize it so they could have more of like a adventurous type of map selling scheme. But the reality was, it started educating this population and these people from a young age, whether school system back then or whether it was just from oral tradition, that hey, the end of the earth is at the equator, and people eventually would stop innovation, stop investing. The kings and queens would stop investing into exploration for tens and hundreds of years because they truly believed what these map makers wrote. They truly believed that the equator ended there. And so at some point, sometimes these belief systems can start to damage growth because it becomes more of a right or wrong thing versus a curiosity thing. Another example of this is, everybody knows about the story of breaking the 4 minute mile from Roger Bannister. But the next really big equation there was when some guy from Africa beat the 4 minute mile by the largest margin in history. And they asked his teammate, what happened? What did he do? And he goes, he just simply doesn't believe in the mythology that the Western runners do. So the question I always have to keep on coming back to myself, when I'm super intimidated by something or when I feel like an anxiousness coming in, is this based on fact or is this based on my judgment of the fact? And 99% of the time, it's based on my judgment of the fact. The fact doesn't have to change. It's my emotional tie to the facts at hand that really help. And as a leader, that's also the question as well. Are you really, really scared about this XYZ thing, or are you basically judging this XYZ thing and then handling the judgment versus the actual fact itself?